Yeah, honestly, I expected a bigger reaction to the paper, though. Seal thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, I joked. What's bread? Sumer asked. And I briefly considered opening a restaurant of human foods for Nume, but alas, is off to war instead. I sat on my couch in my apartment on Earth thinking about what was coming tomorrow, thinking about my life and how much it had changed, and thinking about how I was going to break the news to my mum. I left Atmosia for a while to have a talk with her, but I had no idea how to do it. I guess I can decide during the drive there, I said, standing up and going to my car. It wasn't a long drive, but I came up with a plan of sorts to break the news. First, I would take her out to eat to butter her up, then we walk from the restaurant to her favourite dessert place, Creme de la Creme, and buy her a slice of cake or some muffin tops. On the walk back home, I would break the news to her. I walked up to her door at just after 5 o'clock and knocked. The door opened and she answered surprised. Jake! She hugged me tightly. She thankfully let go before I passed out, but it was a close call. What are you doing here? I decided to come back for a few hours. I thought maybe you would like to go get something to eat. My treat, I offered. As soon as I said that, her face dropped and got serious. What happened? What? Nothing. Why do you think something happened? I stuttered. Jake, you hate going out to eat at restaurants. You have since you were a kid. The only reason you would willingly go is to soften the blow for something, she stated. I didn't know whether to be impressed or frightened at how well she knew me. Can't I just want to do something nice for you? I lied. She looked doubtful but gave in for now. She hadn't eaten dinner yet and was quite pleased and slightly worried when I suggested her favourite restaurant. I landed in the grassy lot outside of my old school. I had many memories held within these walls, most not so good. I did not particularly wish to go back inside, but I wasn't here for myself. Jake asked me, before I sent him back to his world, to check on Selakar's progress. I swallowed my anxiety and flew inside. It didn't take me long to reach her laboratory, and inside I saw she was hard at work, but not in Jake's runes. Madam Selakar? I said, catching her attention. Ah, Sumer, good evening. I assume you are here about the runes? She said, turning back to her work. I am, I answered her. She put down the materials that she was using magic to float above a metal pylon. Is Jake not joining us? She wondered, after noticing his absence. No, he is with his mother right now. He needed to tell her that we were going to war tomorrow, I explained. I see. That's a shame. I would have liked to see his reaction to the completed products, she said, then flew over to a metal container and opened the lid. I fluttered over to the container as well and looked inside. It was full of all of Jake's weapons, and each had been emblazoned with different runes. I must say, it was quite enjoyable to work with Jake's manor, and creating these runes was an interesting puzzle. And you made sure to account for Jake's inversion magic? I questioned. Yes, everything will work exactly as he requested. The inversion magic he has is outstanding. Before he arrived, I'd assumed that I knew everything there was to know about runes, but if they can be inverted, then that means that what I knew was only just the beginning. I can't wait to research all of the new possibilities that his magic represents. It has changed the very way I think about runes, Selakar beamed. Admittedly, seeing her so excited threw me off a bit. She'd been so stoic until now, almost emotionless. Well, thank you for doing this, I told her. Will you be able to carry it with you? She asked. I believe so, but if I can't, Jake can retrieve it later, I answered. I thanked her and wrapped magic around the container to carry it. I was able to, but it was still quite heavy. I would need to fly low to get it home. I was perched in my office alongside my nephew, Baronet Hayard Langress. He was giving me an update on the oddities that were the named Nume, Sumer, and her familiar, Sentinel, or Jake. It seems they are shipping out to Masher Peak tomorrow, Hayard said. I wonder how they will fare, I said. I can almost picture it, Sentinel striding in, Sumer perched atop his new armor that Hayard told me about. One can only imagine how they will do in training, he said, readjusting the position he was perched in, a nervous tick of his. What is bothering you, nephew? I asked. Nothing, he denied. I've known you for 30 years, Hayard, and I know when you are lying, I stated. He relented with a sigh. This Jake is powerful. Too powerful. You are afraid of him? I asked. Not afraid, confused by. There are a great many questions about him, we only have rumors for answers. How did he get such strength? What are his intentions? Where did he come from? He explained. I nodded my head in agreement. It's true we don't know much about Jake, or at least nothing we can confirm. We only know what he has told us, and we must trust it is the truth. But is it the whole truth? Hedlund said. You can't let these rumors worry you, I told him. Would you say that if you had heard them? He asked. I have, I told him, and they are as ignorant as the person who came up with them. Hedlund shook his head. But it would explain much, wouldn't it? If he were a Viking. What do you mean, war? Mum shouted. People on the other side of the street looked at us for a moment before returning to the phone screens. I know how it sounds, but it isn't what you think, I tried to say, but she cut me off at, I know. How could you not tell me you signed up to be a soldier? She shouted, and a few of the people looked up from their phones again, but this time they looked quite shocked. Mum, it isn't what... She cut me off again. What am I going to do if I lose you too? That cut me to my heart. I thought about it, what it would do to her if she lost me and Dad so close together. Mum, we aren't going to be frontline soldiers. We are medics. We take care of the people after they come back from war, I explained. I'll be safely in the tent with Suma away from the fighting. Mum and I spent the next hour talking about it, most of which was spent with me comforting her and trying to get her to stop sobbing. The rest was her begging me not to go. But eventually, I was able to get her to calm down and we resumed our walk back to her car. Once we safely arrived at her car, I reassured her once again that I would be okay. She didn't seem convinced, but she accepted that I was going anyway. I gave her a hug and a kiss on the cheek. I told her I loved her, then she got in her car and drove home. I parked a ways away, so I started my car. I was so caught up in thinking how I'm going to make this up to her, that I didn't even notice I was being followed. After the longest flight of my life, I set the heavy crate of Jake's newly enhanced weapons and armor down on his apartment floor. I perched on a vine pillar to rest for a moment. How does he plan to wear all of that? It weighs so much, I wondered to myself. After I rested, I went outside to see how much longer there was until sunset. I looked up at the sky and saw the ribbons of silver and green starting to form on the horizon, and the sky started to add red to his normal orange. The sun would set soon, and Jake would be asking for me to summon him any time now. I decided to wait for it at his apartment. That way I wouldn't have to fly back if he called as soon as I arrived home. I didn't need to wait long. Suma, can you summon me back? He asked. He almost sounded like he was in pain. Of course, I said, and quickly cast a spell. I started to make a list of the last things I needed to do before we leave tomorrow. My train of thought was interrupted when Jake collapsed, bleeding from his stomach. Turning a corner, I cut through an alley that was a shortcut to where my car was parked. I should have known it was a bad idea before, but I definitely knew after. I was shoved from behind and slammed into a wall. If you scream, I will stab you, the man behind me said. Give me your wallet and your phone, he ordered. If this had happened to me last year, I would have done exactly as he said. But in the last few months, I've been beaten, burned, stabbed, slashed, and any number of other things, so my first instinct wasn't to lie down and take it. The same sense of self-preservation that came over me when I was fighting the Drake and the Borok came over me again, as if I was right back in that field, and I did the first thing that came to my mind. I whipped around and elbowed him in the head. That turned out to be a truly dumb idea. The knife he had was pressed into my back, so when I spun around, I spun right into it. Sure, he went down, hard, but now I was bleeding. You stupid son of a... he started to say, but I was used to pain and fighting, so I still had the advantage. I rushed him again with a fist to his nose. Ah! I bellowed in a blind fury, one hand clutching my side, the other connecting with his face. He needs help, I heard someone say. For a moment, I thought they were talking about me. They weren't. I was knocked to the ground when someone, a friend of his I guess, shoulder-checked me. Now it was 2-on-1. I faced worse odds, but I had a weapon then. Why don't I now, I wondered, as I scrambled to my feet and away from the two muggers. I tried to summon magic in my weapons on Earth before, a couple of times actually, and it never worked. But of course, I'd never been in danger while doing it. Destiny! I yelled. Nothing happened. One of the two looked around confused. Who's he talking to? He's crazy. Just take him down and just get out of here before the pigs come squealing, the other said. The one with the knife rushed me while trying to stab me. I jumped back, but there were two of them and one of me. The other pulled a knife of his own and caught me in the side again. I headbutted him in the nose, and blood immediately started gushing out. He screamed and whined like a baby, but his friend wasn't distracted. He stabbed at me again, but was only able to cut my arm, however it was deep. "Destiny!" I yelled again, more desperately. The odds were not looking good. This time when I called, I did feel something. I felt it for just a moment. A familiar feeling. Magic. "If you keep shouting, someone is going to notice," one of them said. But I did notice who. I was starting to feel faint. I looked down for just a split second. I was bleeding. A lot. "He broke my nose," said the one I headbutted. "Man, forget the money. Let's kill him," said the other. It was now or never. "Destiny!" I shouted, and closed my hand around a familiar metal shaft. This time it worked. The mugger who was closest to me stumbled back. "What is he?" he yelled. But I cut him off by thrusting Destiny into his thigh. "Argh!" he screamed. "Run!" his friend shouted and bolted away, leaving the other behind. "Aegis," I said, and replaced Destiny. I hit him with Aegis' flat side and knocked him out, finally stopping his screaming. I fell back against the wall of the alley and slid down. Aegis disappeared, and the adrenaline started to follow. The pain in my side was becoming much more prevalent. For our private connection, I called Suma. "Suma, could you summon me back?" "Of course," she said. And bit by bit, I watched my arms, legs, and my bleeding wounds disappear. The last thing I saw before passing out was the mugger starting to wake up.